3, 2, 1, action! Cutting there.
In terms of shooting the visual effects shots within the Matrix world, there are all the kung fu, wire work, a lot of compositing, and then the synthetic human stuff. And visual effects work in the real world is essentially 800 full CG shots with live action integration as well.
CGI is an incredible tool because you can do unbelievable things with it that you've never seen before and will never see again.
In this particular production, you have tons of sets, you have tons of digital environments and extensions and objects that are being mixed together. So the amount of integration with CG in these movies is probably more elaborate than anything that's been done.
The siege is just really an epic sequence. I mean, it is just huge.
Oh my God.
It's unusual because it uses everything that a filmmaker has at his disposal to create something gigantic.
The impression was that the detail level would be extraordinary in terms of how many things actually happening during this battle.
That was always, I think, very daunting to everybody. There are so many sort of elements involved in so many shots. I mean, you have a very complex interaction, intermingling of visual effects and practical elements.
Within the Matrix, you have a lot of photographable things. It's like they take place in cities, you know, office buildings, places that you're familiar with every day. But here you've got small little pieces that usually open up into large areas.
It's a huge set. It fills basically all of stage one, and it's got a green screen all the way around it. Even though they're big sets, they're really only kind of small proportions of ultimately what you see in the whole doll.
The APUs are a totally new thing for these films.
I ended up drawing it, making it this 16 feet tall, because I kept thinking they're gonna have this thing carrying guns around. It's basically like a tank. It should look pretty formidable. It should look kind of bulky and clunky, because it shouldn't look too much like a robot in that it, you know, because they're fighting robots and they're against the robots. It should look more like a bulldozer kind of a thing.
I believe it works with the theme of the film, which is this sort of like this grungy mechanical city that they've put together that's, you know, who knows how many hundreds of years old, and it's all this ancient technology that they're using, hydraulics and electric motors, all this other stuff. You got this big, giant metal gorilla that you're animating.
Their personality is literally the personality of the drivers. It's very difficult to recreate the nuances of human expression and human movement totally in a CG world. And because these actors were important, these performances were very important to the directors, I believe that's what drove them to want real humans inside these things.
What, in a sense, we've assembled is a motion base that is aligned to a motion-controlled camera, and both are being driven by files that have been based upon animations that we've been working on for months.
As an animator, you actually got to drive those performances beforehand. So hopefully that when you do get your plates in the post-production process, those performances are already tailored to an action that you've developed.
First thing was coming up with a walk that the brothers and John Gator liked that showed basically the size of the APU, how heavy it was and how it moved and that kind of thing. Then we show that to the actors, show them where the steps are being taken, you know, how this thing's moving, so that it looks like the actors are actually riding in her little animated thing.
You know, the actor in that chair is live, and everything else around it is all CG. The different characteristics of the way these guys are working the rig. You know, this guy is just real forceful with it, and his characteristic going, you know, ahead with a huge body lean, big steps. And this guy is more, you know, leaning back and, you know, real calculated with his aiming. So just that shot alone, you can see the differences that we're building into, that we're animating into the machines.
The dock is breached!
The diggers basically are nothing more than, as the name implies, the devices that just bore holes from the surface of the Earth through every tunnel between the surface and Zion, eventually poking holes in the dock.
And they just described they wanted this scary thing. And they described digging machines, and I called up mining companies to get information on mining equipment.
I did do some sculpting on the digger, and our inspiration was supposed to look half mechanical and a little crustacean. I do think it's a really cool look.
I tried to make them look like teeth. I had some of them worn off, and they look like bicuspids and molars and shit like that. When I lived out in the country, I'd see this farm equipment that used to plow the ground up, and you'd see that stuff, the metal wears down and breaks off so easy. So I'd try to age the metal and make it look like it was breaking off as it was going through the earth.
On this set here, there's like lots of dead sentinels around, but probably if you're on this set and while we were filming, there is like hundreds upon hundreds of sentinels flying around.
Brothers and John Gaeta were both wanting very much to see something new. They wanted to add a little bit more to the Sentinels as far as character elements. Consequently, we have to find places where we can bring out those character elements, but not change them to the degree where they don't feel they work with the Sentinels from the first film.
It's always nice when you can make a Sentinel look like he's thinking. That's the real trick. Any kind of animation is making an inanimate object look like it's having a thought and an emotion.
Yeah. You see, again, you feel that, there was something going on in that head. When I get comments like, the Sentinels really have, attitude and personality here, and there's a purpose here, there's, I know that, well, we achieved something.
There's a lot of flying Sentinel shots.
Oh, well, just the hand of God is a mass of Sentinels that...
Imagine a school of sardines.
Yeah, exactly, like a school
Killer
of fish
sardines.
or something that just kind of form this massive tentacle hand thing that just attacks everything.
The Sentinels, I think, are great. I love the way they're designed. I mean, the Sentinels can do anything, pretty much.
I know what I have to do. What? I have to take one of the ships. What? To go where? To the Machine City.
Machine City is the last environment that we haven't seen, and even though we saw a taste of it in the first movie, it didn't all come together until Revolutions.
You could see their vision, even in the script, it was something completely different. They definitely wanted it to be scary, and atmospheric, and epic.
To me, it's a lot more abstract. A world that's been built by machines, and they don't think like we do. So what we might find aesthetically beautiful, they wouldn't. For them, there is no up, there is no down, there's no inside, no outside, because they don't, gravity doesn't mean anything to them. They don't have a sense of, equilibrium like we do, so it doesn't matter that they could be coming out of the ceiling, or they could be, living upside down. It doesn't exist for them.
Larry Nanny had Jeff do a concept. What he came up with, I think from their brief initially, was the inside of a spinal cord. I think the drawing he did, which was very kind of mechanical looking tubes, which were interconnected with what we call centicles now. You kind of got this feeling that all a series of conduits that run down, but it's like being inside the core of a spinal cord.
we need to define a physical way of building it. So I thought in the end it was best to sort of finish the cylinders with these claw pieces. And then when you cut back to the wide shot, which will be really made up as a visual effects shot, you will end up with these very large crustacean type pieces. You get a sense of drama of this kind of scale.
The Machine City actually, it's always been kind of referred to as like a coral reef or some kind of a foreign kind of a landscape that's just teeming with life.
It did sort of look like it was grown, and there was a sort of a hive, sort of a thing to it.
There were no miniatures. That was one of the interesting things about the job for us, is that normally, with visual effects, you get like background plates, photographic plates you incorporate elements into. And I think that we had something less than a third of the shots that we did had either a foreground plate of the actors in a cockpit or a background plate in some cases with Neo walking down the tunnel into the Machine City. So, man, the amount of digital stuff we had to create was just outrageous.
What the boys always felt is that, the most perfect forms in our world are insects. They're designed to move and be protected, and they're aerodynamically correct, that they can defend themselves. So most of the machine creatures are essentially insect-based.
But some of the things that were interesting is when we started using like particle systems to grow the city. We would run these simulations, and the guys did a great job. Dan Rolinek did all these particle simulations that would sort of create city pieces that would grow buildings. Like we broke the buildings down into different types of buildings and different pieces of buildings. So you might have a base of a building and the tip of a building, and you could recombine those in different orders, and you could give different kind of growth patterns. Now!
The Logos crashes, he sort of crawls out of the Logos, and there's like a big kind of like funnel set, if you like, which sort of takes him to the Deus Ex Machina.
There's several, different areas that we knew were going to be kind of exciting challenges, and the Deus was one of them.
What are you going to draw? What is it going to be? And I didn't want to think about it at all, because I thought this is going to be the hardest thing to draw in this movie, because it's the God machine. It had to be something that a human would recognize as, would have to be humanistic, so that Neo could relate to it, and the audience as well. And everybody thinks of God with the flowing white beard and all this, and I think that's what everybody thought it was going to do, something like that. And I thought I'd go in the opposite direction, and it's the face of a baby, which I thought was pretty horrific, because it's got this horrible urchin-y thing, and all of a sudden all these little robots come out, and they form like the most innocent thing that's possible.
So we started out with the mechanics of it. The guy's like a big porcupine, or again, kind of an aquatic reference, like a big sea urchin, a spiny sea urchin. So we built the initial model with all these spikes everywhere and portals and such. At the same time, we had to work out kind of a performance basis for the guy, right? He was going to form a face. So first off, we went and shot a photographic reference of the director's nephew, Henry. We tried to get key expressions that the Deus would be going through. The parents were there, and they put the toy in front of him and then pull it away to try and get him to do some frowns. We finally got him to cry, which was some of the most appropriate reference that we got. And then the next step was to work with Kevin, one of the actors who was in Light of the Osiris, and we did motion capture sessions and having him go through the lines and generic poses, looking for, again, performance cues. And for the swarms, we took a lot of reference from schools of fish, basically sardines and whatnot, and also tried to mix in some kind of a weird stuff like frequency-dependent, movement that you might see like in iron filings, magnetic fields, or also a field that's kind of loosely called cymatics, which is this idea of sort of visualizing different frequencies through like a lycopodium powder. And there's some pretty outrageous movement and stuff that you see in there. So we started to try to line up what our design elements are that we could use.
It is done.
And then I did the, I guess it's a garbage scow, at the end that transports Neo. It's a dinosaur. I managed to get a dinosaur into the movie. It's like a sort of a triceratops kind of a thing. I just, I got a piece of paper and a pencil, and I can come up with all this stuff, but they got to make it work, and they do.
And the only way we got through it was by the talent and perseverance of the whole crew that was working on the show.
It's like it's very easy to get sort of jaded just looking at a little gray box all day long. Seeing rendered stuff really kind of kicks you back into reality. You're working on something that's going to be really cool when all the elements are stuck together.
Everybody put their back into it and just really kind of pulled miracles out of their pockets on a regular basis.
It's pretty mind-blowing just to see the amount of work that we were able to pull off of this thing.